This is an interview with Chris Kiefer, an engineer who turned marketeer, who turned YouTuber, who finally turned into a no-coder that blends all of these interesting skills. It's an unmissable interview that really shines a light on the importance of facing your fears and insecurities as a professional in this very interesting world that we live in 2024. Without any further ado, let's get stuck in.
What is cracking?
Hey man, how's it going?
Excellent. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's a fine afternoon here in Cyprus, and I guess it's 9 o'clock in the morning?
7:30. Yeah.
7:30 in the morning. Jesus, that is early. Well, at least early in terms of doing like a podcast.
I
interview.
get up at like 4:30 or 5 every day.
Oh,
Go to
wow.
the gym. This is my first meeting of the day, but I'm
Well,
I go to bed early, wake up early.
oh,
It's the only
that's
time
good.
I have to myself without the kids interrupting me is between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m.
5 a.m. and 7 a.m. So 2 hours of
The gym or getting ready.
short
Yeah,
bliss.
exactly. It's a different
Well,
type of bliss with kids.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's you get to appreciate the normality of quiet time, but also they bring this joy, this new life
Yeah.
to everything that you do. I don't have kids right now myself, but um, I've when I was 20, my mom had my brother. So yeah, I was 20.
Basically, you got to experience an adult having a kid.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, man, I must admit it's not easy, but there's something magical about it,
Yeah.
about having kids. Well, look, I want to start things off, especially now that this is your first meeting. I actually want to send you off in the right direction for the rest of the day.
Excellent.
And as I usually do, I start these things with a quick fire round of questions. So I've prepared 8 this
Okay.
time around. Typically I do less, but today we've got 8. So, and in fact, you've actually already answered the first question, which was early bird or night owl. And
Okay.
well, I guess
We'll go do that
early
again.
bird.
Yeah.
Right. So let's start the quick fire round then. And the first question is early bird or night owl?
Early bird for sure.
Of course. I don't think you're gonna have it any other way by the sound of.
Yeah.
One app that you cannot live without, personally or professionally.
Airtable.
Okay.
I would say
I was
that's
kind of leaning towards the phone apps, but I'm surprised with that answer.
Oh, okay. Phone apps. I would say honestly, I think I would say Spotify or YouTube.
On the phone. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Do you have music on or off when you're working?
Off.
Okay. All right. If you had any superpower related to tech, what would it be?
I would say that I have a engineering background, and the sales and marketing knowledge mixed with entrepreneurship. So I would say again and again, what I'm starting to realize more and more is the ability to be extremely technically minded, but then be a very like verbal or sales type of explainer or relator of complex ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to say that in a simple, like, what is that skill? But it's basically being like the interface between, like, I could code if I had to, but I also love chatting and talking to people and really just like taking a difficult concept and creating like a mental model to explain it to a non-technical person.
Okay, but that sounds like a superpower that you already have.
Oh, if
What
I
about
could
one?
get one that I want.
What would be like one that you don't have that you really would want.
Okay, so I would say if somehow like it's like Neuralink, if there was a way to basically have Chat GPT or a large language model in your head, that would be my desired superpower.
That's awesome. I think we're 3 or 4 years away. So
yeah, according to Elon, next year we'll have it next year.
1,000 people.
That's right.
Well, now that's I think now with everything that's happening, I think that's more of a reality than not. So, okay, next question is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? Not given, received.
I would say it's kind of a mixture of a couple different things, but it's just starting. So like take action, do something. And then consistency is going to win over skill or talent or motivation. It's like being consistent is the key to success.
Would you argue that consistency is more important than quality?
Yes, 100%. Because the consistency leads to quality. I don't know if you've heard of the quantity versus quality discussion. I would say that in my experience, it's kind of an irrelevant thing to debate, because the person that does a lot of quantity with intentionality, that's a prerequisite. But assuming that you are giving your best, if you can show up every day and like you make a YouTube video and you make another YouTube video and another YouTube video, like the guy who does 1,000 YouTube videos is going to do better than the one who spent, hours producing 10. And that's in the beginning, I would say. When you become Mr. Beast, right? Then it's like, all right, let's spend a lot of time and energy making every video an insane quality. But the biggest thing that I'm very passionate about right now is the best is the enemy of the good. And too many people, I think,
I've heard that in a book somewhere, I think.
Yeah, too many people focus on, I need to make this video better, or I need to make this book or this process better, and they don't ship it. And they end up paralyzing themselves because you have to just continue to get reps. And I think a lot of times it feels better to be like, I'm just planning a really awesome video, but you didn't produce any value at all until it's published. So I would say the focus is continue to show up. And then once you have the habit of producing content, then spend time improving the content. But sometimes people, I think, are like, I got to figure out how to improve my output. And it's like, you're not even showing up every day. Like until you show up every day, then like all you need to focus on is sitting down at the desk. There's so many books, The War of Art, Atomic Habits. But this idea of like, if you want to be whatever it is, whether it's a writer, a YouTuber, a business consultant, a sales rep, it's like the number one thing is do the work, put in the reps, and do it day in, day out when you feel like it, and especially when you don't feel like it. And then once you're in the habit of just doing it, now we can have a productive conversation of, now that I've taken 100 reps, how could I make my 101st one better? And then my 102nd one better, and so on and so on and so on.
Okay. I mean, I agree with you, but there's one thing in me that somehow pushes for quality and quantity from the get-go. Like, not only do I want you to show up, but start thinking about quality immediately. Because this is not 1998, right? The landscape is quite competitive, generally speaking.
And what or just to be clear, I'm assuming you're talking about YouTube.
The landscape. Let's talk about YouTube tech, that sort of thing. I feel like the landscape is competitive enough that the people watching, unless you are super niche, And we're gonna get into the whole conversation about YouTube. Like you're a very interesting case study, and I've got a bunch of YouTube-oriented questions that we're gonna get into in a sec. But generally speaking, I feel like one of the reasons why I would show up is because I want to like the stuff that I'm producing first. So it's a driver for me. Quality is a driver for me. And I also don't treat my audience as people who aren't sensitive to quality. Like
Yep.
the persona of that I have in my head is basically somebody like me who wants the quantity and wants the quality as much as possible, with the budget restrictions that one might have. But
Yeah.
anyway, we're gonna get into the
I mean, I would
conversation.
say, just to clarify, I agree with everything you said. I would just say for the average person, you're way more likely to find or come across someone who has a desire to become somebody and they have no demonstrated action of taking any progress towards that future somebody. And I would say more often than not, the limiting factor is like, you didn't even, like, if you want to learn how to throw a baseball, you got like, have you ever picked one up and thrown it?
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't. Okay. Well, maybe
no, I
pick one
have.
up.
Like, you mean?
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah.
like, that idea is the same thing of like, there's so much that comes, especially, I want to clarify that to me, I'm like, what was the first YouTube video that you published ever? Not even on the current channel, but did you make a video on a separate channel before this channel came to existence?
Is this a question?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I actually did YouTube, and I still think that the channel exists. I used to review guitar gear. Like, my trade, so to speak, is a musician. I was trained to be a guitar teacher.
That's awesome.
Back in 2010, I kind of realized that, YouTube was still, it was actually quite popular. Like, we would spend a lot of time on YouTube. And because we were watching so many guitarists demonstrate things, it was a really serious driver for me to do the same because, well, I liked it. And I was much younger, but back then I was 20? And there is an element of self-promotion, of course, and all of that. So you kind of want to make it and you want to stand out from the crowd. So yeah, I did publish way back when, and also was involved in the production and publishing of commercial videos later on when I was like working in the UK. But yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more with consistency. It is the most difficult thing. But like I said, we're gonna get into it. There is a lot of other things about YouTube that I want to unpack with you and pick your brains.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the to the quick fire round questions. There's only 2 left, so it's gonna be, actually no, a little bit more. If you weren't in tech, what would be your dream career?
I would say it probably would be some sort of coaching or, I mean, does entrepreneurship count? Because I'm kind of in like a tech entrepreneur.
You're already a tech entrepreneur. So could we say that you are living the dream career in a sense?
Yeah, I would say the thing that I'm most passionate about is entrepreneurship, and then also like the self-development or like self-mastery or becoming the best version of yourself. So I would say something in that realm of just like helping other people unpack or discover the limiting beliefs that are holding them back, or the ways to progress in life to get closer to whatever the desired outcome is that you have for yourself. And again,
Cool.
I happen to think that entrepreneurship is a really efficient vehicle to do that, because it's just, to me, I'm like, when you create an engine that it produces value, and in exchange for that value, you're bringing in revenue, the options that are in front of you are like, I just feel like I think about things massively different than I did when I was in college or high school. And it's just like, what do you want to do? And then it's like, okay, well, can you find a way to make a machine that produces value that's even parallel or in any way remotely close to whatever that goal is? But you could also just make a business that's producing value, and then from that machine go pursue other things. But yeah, I guess, I don't know, I feel like entrepreneur, like the commerce and the economy is what makes everything go. You can't, everybody, there needs to be jobs somehow. And I like the idea of producing those jobs and enabling people to have a livelihood that is, not focused on their job, but their job enhances or allows them to do what they love to do.
Well, I was kind of looking for an answer that was closer to like, oh, astronaut or something like that. But
yeah,
here we are.
It's so hard for me to not go into some philosophical thing. Like the mission of, and this is actually, I got some critique on my YouTube channel. We have this on our YouTube channel. This says our mission is freeing you up to do what you love. What's the guy's name? Sean Cannell from Think Media. I signed up to get like a YouTube audit from him. And one of the first things that his team said was, my banner says like Boolean automation freeing you up to do what you love. And people are like, what the hell does that mean? It's like, I get it.
It's
but
too
like,
vague,
is this for me? Yeah. But that's like the core underlying thing that motivates me, is just like, I believe we all have things that we love in life, whether that's kids or hobbies, fishing, whatever, traveling, hiking. And I think that, like, I want to be someone that's empowering people to do more of what they love. But in order to do that, you have to be free. And so how do you create more freedom in your life? And, that's the entrepreneurship seems like the most efficient way to do that for me.
No, that's absolutely right. I agree with you. Really don't really have much to add to that. But yeah, it's lovely. We're gonna get into some of your your origins and how you got to where you are at the moment. Let's try and finish these quick fire round questions because I feel like this is gonna take a couple of hours now. So another interesting question: who's your biggest inspiration in tech?
I would say there's layers.
Okay.
I have people that are like, I'll just kind of list off some random people, but so Elon Musk, I'm a big fan of what he has done, and just like the number of like quote unquote impossible things that he's solved. So that's like very out there. There's another tech, you could say, is he in tech or not, but he's definitely video, and that's Casey Neistat. I would say Gary Vaynerchuk is also, I have some beliefs around how I think that have come from him in the last, 10 years or so. Less recently, but he definitely helped start or move me in the right direction. I would say Dan Martell is he runs SaaS Academy. He's a very inspiring person. But yeah, I guess it depends on like the level of
But if you had to
how
pick
I'm
one,
getting inspired. Yeah.
But if you had to pick
How I'm
one,
being inspired, I would say yeah, I mean, I guess I would say Elon Musk is like the exam, and for no other reason than I just love that he has ridiculous ideas. He's a very polarizing person.
Mhm.
And I believe that in order to have an impact in the world, you have to become a polarizing individual, which is scary for me. Like having opinions and stating those opinions so that you're firing people up that are excited to follow you and you're pissing people off that hate you. And I feel like that to me is like the goal is not to say things to piss people off. But oftentimes in pursuing any great goal, you are going to say things that are controversial. And like one of my favorite questions, and I'm gonna flip it and ask you because I ask all people that I hire this. This is a Peter Thiel question.
Oh.
But what is something that you hold to be true that most people would disagree with?
Oh, so deep. What is one thing that I hold to be true that most people disagree with? Most people. Well, I don't even know.
It's
I'm-
a like it's a one to
okay. I will give you this. So I believe in being obsessed. Like that's the one thing that I feel like a lot of people misunderstand. So if you are obsessed with what you're doing, like a lot of people are obsessed with a bunch of different things, especially things that are bad for them, like alcohol, friends, drugs. I don't know, anything that kind of like drives that dopamine thing. But I feel like being obsessed is a gift. We just have to like put it in the right direction, and also being obsessed with with things that help other people, which in my life has been quite a therapeutic thing as well, in the sense that the moment I started doing things for other people, in the sense that I didn't put money in front of help. I put help, and then I just couldn't care less about the money. If I put help in front of being depressed or feeling down, I immediately got cured from that depression. So being obsessed with helping people in whichever way possible. I'm not just talking about creating apps or creating a YouTube video, but like fixing somebody's garden. You know, like week in, week out, be their gardener, do their lawn, something stupid that just helps somebody else. So I think that's one belief that a lot of people could misunderstand. And like even from my close circle, people have said like, dude, chill. Why are you not charging these people? Why are you overpaying employees? Like, you know, that sort of thing. Some of these things might sound stupid to some people, but I know that hopefully I've answered your question. Now
yeah,
back
and
to you.
I was just digging up a quote here. Brendan Burchard says, "People are always saying to follow your passion, but when you're obsessed, people think you're nuts. If no one thinks you're crazy, you're not yet operating to the outer limits of your potential." And I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand with this idea of like when you reach, I mean, literally like name anybody that is quote unquote popular or has, and even if it's not, the goal is not popularity, but like Mother Teresa or Gandhi or Jesus or any of these like incredibly figures throughout all of time, George Washington, like anybody, Winston Churchill, they all have haters, right? Every single one. There's a group of people that are like whatever, and as you become more notable, the the number or let's say it's just a percentage. Like I don't know what this is, but this is how my mind works. Let's say that at any given time for any person, the average is 10% of the people in your circle of influence are going to not like you, right? If your circle of influence is 10, then there's one person that doesn't like you, right? And you probably don't even know about them. But as you grow, like the percentages are they're going to hold steady. And who knows what that is. But the point is that if your circle of influence grows, you're going to have people that start saying things that are tearing you down or disagreeing with any stances that you have. And I would say that it is impossible to reach significant levels of influence without like accruing a mass of people that are disagreeing with you, right? Because if you just said the most agreeable stuff all the time about everything, then no one cares and no one's going to follow you, because what's the point? Like, you're not saying anything of substance.
That's true. Favorite no-code tool?
Airtable. So we'll go back to that.
Yes. Well, let's now go
that was
into...
a fast round, huh? Quick round
incredibly
questions.
fast. That was literally half an hour of the quick fire round. It's insane. Well, look.
And side note, I can go. I don't know how long you want this to be, but I do have until
I've got time.
I have an hour from now, so we still have an hour.
We still have an hour. I'm with you on that hour. So, usually when I prepare for these kinds of interviews, I do a little bit of snooping around people's LinkedIns and just doing my fair bit of research. I want to understand the person, where they came from. And you've got one of the most varied LinkedIn profiles I've seen in a very long time. There is interning at Lockheed Martin, which must have been insane. There's Sky Media, you're founding Bullion. You're heavily involved in construction, the construction business. Then you've got a YouTube channel, you've got a podcast, and you've got kids and family and everything else. So where does all of this come from? What were some of the early experiences that have led you towards this career path which you're on right now?
First of all, thank you. It feels good to have someone dive. Like, I haven't talked about Lockheed Martin in a long time. But yeah, I would say truth is that so when I was growing up, I loved Legos and building and blocks and Kinects. I don't know if anyone played with Kinects.
Yep.
Kinects are not as popular as Legos are now. But
no.
I loved Kinects. And so everybody in my life was like, "Oh, Chris, you're going to be an engineer." And like, basically from the earliest memory that I have of someone looking at a kid and saying, like, "You're going to do X, Y, Z," right? It's basically engineer. And that's just what I heard forever. And so when I graduated high school and was like, I'm going to go to college, people were like, "What are you going to study?" And it was like, almost like I didn't even decide or think about it. It was just like, "Oh, engineering, duh." Like, obviously.
What else?
Yeah. So I went into engineering, and I went into my freshman year of college. I told my professor, we were assigned like a counselor or whatever. And I was like, I want to have like an epic internship somewhere before I graduate. And he was like, he ran through some companies of like people that had graduated Carroll that are now in different tech companies. And Lockheed Martin was one of them. And there's this guy, Glenn Gebert, who was the lead, like the VP of the Aerodynamics Center of Excellence at Lockheed Martin in Orlando. And so I reached out to him as a freshman and basically was like, "What do I need to do to be an intern for you by the time I'm a junior?" And so he told me which classes to take and what they look for and all this stuff. And I was like, "All right, I have the list. I'm going to start working on that." Right? And it wasn't like I was so dedicated. I just rearranged my schedule to make sure I was taking classes that they valued. And then I also made sure I got an internship my freshman year, my sophomore year, and then my junior year, I got this opportunity at Lockheed Martin. Right before that, though, so the summer before, my dad, so this is when I was just turned 21, my dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he passed away basically 3 months after that. So I'm a sophomore in college, and my dad, who was a unbelievable dad, fantastic, cared about me, was so present, came to all my basketball games. He was just the model figure of a father that you could ever ask for. And so it was pretty devastating when he passed away. And this is upon reflecting back on this time of my life, because this was now 13-ish years ago, roughly. And basically what I have now taken from that is, prior to my dad dying, my goal in life was basically, I want to work on rockets, missiles, the coolest tech, AI, like whatever is the most insane and cool technology. That's what I wanted to do. And make as much money as possible doing that stuff. And that was basically as far as I thought. And then my dad dies when I'm a sophomore in college. And all of a sudden, it was like everything that I was excited about before and the things that were important to me completely flipped. Like basically overnight, I didn't care about partying, drinking, any of that stuff. I was just like, and when I say overnight, maybe it was like a 6 to 12 month period, but relatively short period of time. I remember coming home from college and visiting my high school friends that had gone to different schools. And it's like I didn't relate to any of them. I just was like, I know that I want to be in business and entrepreneurship and all this stuff. I went to Lockheed Martin, which was the year after my dad died. It was incredible, absolutely blown away. I worked on the entire internship was like, my assignment was analyzing the aerodynamics of a targeting turret that sits on the bottom of a Black Hawk helicopter. And they wanted to look at the the vibrational force that happens on this object when you're traveling at different speeds, right? So it's like the most niche thing. That was like my project, and I did all this 3D modeling and stuff. And I was able to discover like whatever limitations that I could talk about that for another hour. But that was my project at Lockheed Martin. And I got to see like cutting edge stuff. This was 13 years ago. That was like just being discovered and developed, like 3D printing metal and stuff like that 15 years ago, and like making grenades and stuff. Yeah, it's just ridiculous stuff. I come back from Lockheed Martin and they had offered me a job. And basically I was like, instead of going to Orlando, I realized that I had a younger brother who now also didn't have a dad. And he was just entering his freshman year of high school. And so I decided basically I'm going to scrap that dream of becoming, very successful in defense or, aerodynamics and all that stuff, and come back home and work at an engineering firm in Portland and just be basically close to my brother. And that to me was like a massive, like that point set me on a trajectory of all this other stuff that now would lead me to where I am today. And I won't continue in the extreme detail, but the point is that someone asked me a while ago, this was probably 8 years ago, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And this is a really good question to ask yourself and anyone listening. Genuinely, like, take a second, pause this. What is the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And this could be like, can go to a pretty dark place for some people.
Yeah.
But for me, I was immediately like, my dad dying. And this is when I did this. See, like, my dad dying for sure. Worst thing that's ever happened. And then they asked the second question, which is, how is it, or how could it be that is actually the best thing that's ever happened to you? So basically reframe or journal or write down, what did you gain from this horrible experience that actually is the best thing that could have possibly happened to you in your current life? And that was like this huge transformation in how I think about stuff, to be like this super painful, hard moment in life, to all of a sudden realize I'm so grateful for it. Like it's given me so many things that I have now that I know for sure I wouldn't have if my dad hadn't passed away. So it's a pretty difficult topic for some people to get into, but it's like, I'm genuinely glad and grateful that my dad died when he did. But also, I wish like anything he was still here. Like I would give anything to have another conversation and talk about. He doesn't know any of my kids. He didn't get to see my wedding. Not like there's so many things that he knew Chris the engineer, and that's who died. Or when he died, that's who I was, you know. And now I'm this massively different person, and because he died, and it changed my priorities and my focus and everything. And so, anyways, I don't even remember what your question is, but the point is like, where did I get to?
How did you get to here?
To here.
To today? Of course, in not a massive amount of detail, but it's just the fact that you've had such a varied engineering, tech, media career that and the fascination with like buildings and painting businesses, like that's where I was kind of wondering how
does that come in?
How does that come around?
Yeah, and I would say with that is like I gave the backstory for this core moment of my dad dying, reframed everything. So it's like pre-Terry Kiefer dying, I was like engineer, 100%. He passes away, and all of a sudden I'm like, I want to get into entrepreneurship and leadership. Like I just had this inkling that I wanted to do it. So I basically left my engineering job 6 months after college. So I took a job in engineering and then just quit. Went in and started a marketing video production company. And so I am still an engineer. Like where does this all come from? I am an engineer. Like I tell people that I think in spreadsheets. Like my brain is just like spreadsheets. Like at any time, I would never use a Google Doc. I would always use Google Sheets to write anything. It's like, I just wanted to structure it in columns and rows and records and stuff. That's how I think. But on top of that, I was like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I didn't even know, I've never taken a business class or anything like that. I just was like, all right, I'm going to start a company. And so I had all these reps at marketing and making videos for random companies that then, when we started having kids, this was 7 years ago, it wasn't like I was crushing it in the entrepreneur world and with my media company. That's the Sky Studios and Sky Media. Yeah. We were doing okay, but it wasn't like, I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't charging enough, all sorts of different things. But I had all this knowledge and reps at sales, marketing strategy, video production, just literally bringing in leads to businesses. And so I had this opportunity to be a marketing director for a painting company, and they were a good sized painting company. And that was like the beginning of, I was an entrepreneur. I left that because it was like not putting food on the table, basically, but I gained a lot of skills. Sure. And then I was applying all this knowledge from marketing to one company. So I had a team of people that were all focused on building one brand and making one company awesome. And in that 3-year period of working at Webfoot, I made a lot of relationships with other painting companies and other marketing directors and things like that. And then it was like this gift from God to have all this marketing and engineering, like thinking, then applied to one painting business for 3 years and all the relationships to other painting companies. And so people started asking me, hey, Chris, could you do for us what you did for Webfoot? And I was like, I mean, I don't know. You know, I love my job here. I'm doing a lot of cool stuff, but it just kept happening. And I was finally like, there's an opportunity here. And that was just over 2 years ago that I sat down with my boss at Webfoot and was like, hey, I feel really called and excited about this opportunity. And I want to make sure this is a smooth transition for you guys, but I want to pursue this. And so that was basically like, in a nutshell, you've got this engineer who then ran a marketing video production, learned entrepreneurship and sales. It's a big leap.
Like, yeah, and then I run very scary.
Yeah, I would say it was like paralyzing before, and then afterwards looking back, it's like, why did it take me so long?
No, but I mean,
feel
to
like
me,
that happens
it's like a huge clash of worlds. The world of logic, numbers, black and white, into marketing, which is a world of making
Feelings.
$1 million look like $10 million.
Yeah.
And feelings and like really intangible things that rarely can you put on a spreadsheet. And the switch from one to the other must have been terrifying, but there must have been some kind of really, really strong driving force in order to pursue such a different direction compared to engineering.
Yeah.
But I can tell that it has paid out. You've got a very successful YouTube channel. Okay, maybe it doesn't have gazillions of subscribers, but every single view, it's it's very targeted, very directed to a very niche segment of the market, which is painting companies. And speaking of YouTube, I really wanted to, because we're kind of getting there now in your trajectory of how you began at Lockheed, your dad, and now we're kind of getting into, I guess, the resurrection of Sky Media and Bullion. Do you feel like now with Bullion, YouTube is a important part, or is it like, how much of your success do you attribute to your YouTube channel?
That's a good question. Yeah, we get leads. I would say currently. So I was just looking because you always check out metrics and you're grading yourself on something. But I would say right now we have 3,970 subscribers. I posted my first video on the YouTube channel on, what day would this have been? This was on, it was like a year and a half ago-ish. Why doesn't it say the date there? Anyways, so let's say October 12th. So first video I ever posted was about 13 months ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I would say success, like where does success come from? It's a whole bunch of things. It's hard to say like as one or the other, but I would say the first thing was, I would attribute most of my quote unquote success basically from just like, no matter what job or position I had, I always was trying to be the best at that thing. So when I was doing the video production, like we were just constantly pushing ourselves and stretching and trying to do a bigger project, better project. I made a documentary, like all these random things that on one hand, it's like, why did I do that? I was like, I don't know. It was hard and it sounded challenging and I thought I could. So I tried it, And then I take this job as a marketing director and I was like, I want to crush this, like, and just win so badly that people notice. And then they were like, hey, Chris, do you want to be on the senior leadership team? And then I'm in like different marketing groups, like, hey, could you give a talk on Zapier? Hey, could you do that? And so like, I would say so much of anyone's success, and it's kind of like your idea of obsession. I would say I was obsessed with like efficiency and data. And that's probably the longest running trait that Chris is just like, I used to tell people it's kind of funny because I feel like I'm getting closer to this thing that I don't even know how to describe. But I was like, man, I wish there would have been a degree in college for like efficiency. Like, cause that's what I love is just like, how do we get the same output with less input or less energy? And just like, that's what I was doing forever. And so it was the obsession with that idea and just getting really good that then opened the door for other things to happen. Like in any of the jobs that I had, if I would have just been showing up and collecting a paycheck, and just doing the bare minimum to get by, there would be no Boolean, no Sky, nothing, because who would pay for that? It's kind of like what you said about your YouTube channel and business. You have to be obsessed with actually delivering some sort of quality or result or value, or people just leave. Like it seems like a no-brainer. But YouTube in particular, I would say the thing, and this is why I'm so adamant on the idea of quantity over quality. It was the scariest thing to start posting YouTube videos. I didn't know what to post about. I didn't know
what motivated you to start.
Well, I actually was looking. My first ever video that I posted on YouTube was 16 years ago when I was a junior, I believe, in high school. And it was just like I was, stereotypical 2000s or whatever. I was like, oh, we're going to make videos with friends. They're just a bunch of really dumb videos. But I've always liked video. And then I kept hearing about all these, and that's why I said Gary Vaynerchuk is one. I followed Casey Neistat, and you just see that what YouTube is doing, or the internet in general, is that it's allowing for people to connect with other people that are in these hyper niche like groups. And that's never existed until like 20 years ago. And so after seeing enough people, like I didn't know what my niche was, but then all of a sudden when there was this opportunity to do automation specifically for painting companies, I was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to document and just like put tutorials of what I'm figuring out. And it was, well, at the beginning, it was like, hey, I had 2 people ask me how to connect their Google business profile with Zapier or whatever and automatically do something, right? And I was like, maybe I should make a video because there's probably a 3rd or a 4th person that's going to ask me how to do that. And I could just send them the link and then I won't have to take my time to answer the same question. Right. So it's like that level of simplicity of just like, hey, if one person had the question, maybe somebody else will. Or like I would go try and figure something out and I couldn't find a video. So then I would solve it myself and be like, I should make a video about how I just connected Paint Scout to this other tool. And so that was like, I knew that I wanted to do that for literally the last 2 years. I was like, I should do YouTube. And I didn't do it for over a year in business, partly because I had like these relationships and leads that were coming in just from being in different mastermind groups. But I was like, I know I need to do this. And basically I was in a coaching group and I was like, I'm going to post 100 videos before the end of the year. So I had 90 days and I was like, I'm going to post a video every day, sometimes twice a day, and get 100
Casey
videos.
Neistat style.
Yeah. I was like, I just need to get 100 videos. And my belief was in like on December 31st, if I had posted 100 videos, I will be in a better place objectively than if I do 10 or 20 or 0 or whatever. Like it doesn't matter. So I lowered the bar, which was the thing preventing me from doing it, and just saying, just freaking post a video. Like I have so many things in my head. So if you have an idea, just record it. And so if you look at all my videos, especially from the beginning, they're literally just like crappy mic, crappy camera, whatever. I'm just like, hey, here's my screen share and I'm doing this thing, right? And then I'd do another one and then another one. And funny thing is, I actually missed my goal of 100 videos by the end of the year. I was at like 85 or something.
Wow.
And so, but then I ended up getting it. Now I'm at 259 videos. And again, I completely agree that quality matters. And if anything, I can admit that I probably need to spend more time now because I have a base of spending and being more thoughtful with the video production and being more intentional. But I would argue that you don't even earn the right to do that until you can show up 100 times or 200 times or whatever the number is, because you have to have stuff to analyze. So that's why I still think that quantity is huge.
Speaking of which, how, and you kind of answered this question, but I still want to ask this. How do you find the motivation or the inspiration to keep producing more and more? Considering that no code and automation is quite a niche subject, very niche. And yet you are even nicher because you're kind of doing automation for painting companies, which is really unusual, at least to me, because I'm kind of...
It's unusual to me too. So it still is weird.
It feels like I'm, like we do everything in our agency, on the channel. Like, throw me in any business vertical and I will find things to say. But 256 or odd videos and growing in a very specific niche I feel like, wow, that is hard to do. So how do you? What's the secret? Like how do you find stuff to say?
Now, before we go any further, I would like to say that we appreciate absolutely every single person who watches this channel, and we're trying to reach a goal of 3,000 subscribers by the end of this year, 2024, December 31st, 2024. Now, I know what you're thinking, this is kind of like a lame target, but we're a small channel. So let's up the ante. If we get 10,000 subscribers by that date, I will say bye-bye to my most precious possession, my beard. Anyway, back to the video.
Yeah, I mean, that I would say the first thing is that and this is the first time I'm ever saying this. This is a realization you're helping me come to. The more general you are, the more I would agree that quality is king. The more niche you are, then the more and more quantity wins, because like
Okay.
at the end of the day, if I'm trying to think of a ridiculously specific thing that I've connected, like there's an app called Drip Jobs. It's literally an app for painting companies. Like nobody, you would never use this if you weren't a painting company. And so I made a video of how when you win a job in Drip Jobs, you can auto send text messages to subcontractors with like the quote details or whatever. And it's like, who in the world looks at that video? It probably has 15 views.
But it's
But,
15 people
somebody,
who are looking for
that are painters that use Drip Jobs, like there's the very specific things that's like, those are 15 people that are like, oh my gosh. And like, I could have recorded it on my phone with no mic. And like, as long as it answered the question that they were after, that's like, no one's like, well, I don't trust this guy because he doesn't have a nice camera, you know? But if you're just like, I want to teach people how to use Zapier, to me, I'm like, well, good freaking luck. Like there's hundreds or thousands of people that have Zapier videos. And so now you're just competing with all these people that have big budgets that have been doing it forever. And so I would say, there's actually freedom in going niche. The one thing that I will admit, though, because it's not like if I didn't just wake up and say, I'm going to make videos for painters, that would be absurd. And I would not recommend that. What I did was I had relationships in my life, like literally people that were talking to me. And I've even thought, like, if I were to give someone advice that was like a 20-year-old or 25-year-old, I would say, go take a job at some industry that you feel loosely connected to in some way, and just get obsessed with crushing it in that field, and just stay on the lookout. Like, pay attention, talk to other people, get in mastermind groups of painters or whatever the market is that you're in, and learn and ask and just poke around. And then you're going to come across hundreds of problems. And so it's not like, I want to clarify, I didn't have this strategy, but I accidentally did it, if that makes sense. And now it's like so obvious that once you develop all the relationships, I had like a list of 10 clients on day one that they didn't say they wanted to hire me, but there was relationships there that I basically had to be like, hey, you know how you asked me to do this thing 4 months ago? Well, I can do that for you. And I can also do these other 6 things. Should we chat and see if it makes sense? Like, I'm doing this consulting thing now. And people were like, yeah, sure. So then you do another one. And then the first one was hard, but then on the 4th sale, you're like, I've already done this for 3 painting companies that are exactly like you. So I could do it for you also, you know? And this is actually a really important thing. I know not everybody watches this on YouTube. Do you post this on like Spotify and stuff also?
Actually, I don't. It's only YouTube. It's only YouTube. So I probably should.
You should, just put it on Anchor. Well, I mean, most of your videos, it would be only these long form ones that you'd want on there. But this right here is the thing that I think is, Alex Hormozy. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh yeah, of course.
So this is the thing that in his book, $100 Million Offers, he breaks this down. And this is, again, I didn't go into this with this knowledge, but I've now seen it and I've experienced it firsthand. And this is what I would say you really need to understand when you're trying to price your stuff. How much should I charge? We charge 6 figures to work with us. So like one client is going to be spending close to, or oftentimes more than $100,000 to have Boolean come in and automate their company. There is no way in the world that we could charge that much if we were generalists, because we don't have and I'll break this down, is that the formula for those listening, not looking at it, is dream outcome multiplied by the perceived likelihood of that happening, divided by how long it's going to take for me to get the result, multiplied by the amount of effort that I'm going to have to put in to get it. And so I'll put in some examples here, but like, let's say the dream outcome is I want to have a six pack abs and look ripped, right? And then it's like, well, how likely is this to happen? And I'm looking at some different trainers, and this guy, I'm like, he seems like he has a good shot. So I'd say there's like a 60-70% chance that happens. So that's affecting what I value that at. But then on the bottom, this is the part that gets really interesting. What if the guy told me it's going to take 3 years and, 5 days of workouts a week and like all this stuff? Now I have a long time to wait, which decreases the value. I have to put in a ton of my own effort to get the result, which decreases the value. And you compare that with, what if, this is an imaginary scenario, I came to you, Alex, and was like, hey, you want this, ripped body? Well, I have done this not only with, thousands of people, but I've done this with hundreds of YouTubers that live in Cyprus, and you're just listing off all these things. It's like, I literally can guarantee that this happens. And you're like, whoa, like I'm listening now. And then I could say, and you're not going to believe it, but as soon as you swipe your credit card, look down at your stomach, you're going to have 6-pack abs. So now I've decreased the time for you to get the thing you wanted, and no effort on your part. So the value goes through the roof, because you're like, what we're trying to do at Boolean is decrease the time to value, or the ROI, and decrease the amount of work that the business that we're working with has to put in. So it's like, we can do this thing that you want. We've demonstrated it dozens of times across businesses that are exactly like you. So your likelihood or perceived value of us being able to deliver is 99%. And then I'm like, and guess what? We can do stuff in 30 days that would take a general automation specialist 12 months to do. And it's going to take you way less time, way less meetings and all that. So then now you can start raising your prices. And by the way, we get better and more efficient and faster at doing the same thing. And we're building templates and systems, and we're automating the building of our automations now.
You're able to like onboard them much, much quicker.
Oh my gosh,
one of the perks of being niche, niche in a niche.
Exactly.
So,
and I would say,
yeah.
So I have thought, and there's been people that have asked me, plumbers, electricians, tree arborists, and it is so tempting to work in those industries, because I know we could do it. I know we would. It's not that different from painting. We could 100% do that. But what I've realized is the more that we say no to those opportunities and pass them off to people like you or others that will work with them, they're great opportunities. You can make good money automating those businesses. But the painting companies, I just keep coming back to this formula every time of like, if we can just get so good, so fast, and require less effort to get the same outcome, there is real money there. And that's margin, that's profit. That's good for everybody that's involved. And I don't, as a business owner, you'd be like, that's crazy to pay 6 figures to have someone do this. I bet I could find someone on Upwork for 10 grand. I'm like, you definitely can. I know it. You probably find someone cheaper than that. But how likely are they to get you the outcome you want? How long is it going to take? How much babysitting are you going to have to do over the next 9 months to get the thing you want? Whereas if you just wrote the check, your business is a completely different business that's more efficient and going to make you more money in 30 days. Like, it's
basically
just,
you're an
silly.
express. You're basically a fast track automation specialist for that industry, and
Exactly.
there's nobody like you, basically.
No, I know
So
there's.
and
I've joked
that's
that we are
why.
the most. We are the most niche channel on YouTube, I think, and I think
Yeah,
that's a good thing. I mean, I'm joking. There might be someone, but the point is that like, show me someone that is literally more specific than this, and like they're probably doing really well too.
coming back to your original point about YouTube and like the early stages of your YouTube journey, like I've noticed this with a lot of people that I'm trying to get to an interview with me, and I've noticed how much people shy away from it, like just being on camera, like being asked questions about you, or in general. Like I had one guy recently who I really wanted to interview, and he's like, you know what, um I'm planning to do my own YouTube thing this year, so let's put off the interview. And I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. But in my heart of hearts, I'm thinking, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because if you knew what I know now, you'd be running to do these kinds of interviews. You would be running towards these opportunities to promote yourself, to express where you come from, explain how you are an expert at XYZ. Let the new potential clients who are looking at this video to understand who they're dealing with. Do they speak good English? Like down to the very basic things. Why do you feel like so many, like, and this is a question for you, Chris, why do you feel like so many people in the let's put no code industry, CEOs, the companies themselves, right? The SaaS companies that we know and love and use. So CEOs of these companies, people working in those companies, and then the developers, so to speak. Why is it so many people treat YouTube as an afterthought? Why do you think that is?
I mean, I honestly would say I think it's ignorance, or just like no, they don't have. They haven't. Once you experience it, like you have, it's the same thing for me. I'm like, man, I wish I would have started this 10 years ago. Like it's so obvious. Like Mr. Beast saw this before anybody else, and he was the most obsessed person on this thing. And he didn't. I guarantee you, he didn't even understand what he was doing, but he knew that there was something big. And I would say, I think sometimes people might feel like they've missed it, like they've missed the boat. Like, oh, we should have done that 5 years ago. So I guess I'm just not going to do it
It's
now.
too late.
Yeah. And I would say, no, you can literally hear this today, or you could watch this recording in 5 years and you still are, and you have plenty of time. Start now. It's still valuable. I also would say there's maybe this scarcity mindset, or there's something that I have worked
In what sense?
on, and well, something that I have worked on personally is just the idea of like an abundance mindset versus a scarce mindset. And like, I feel like there is so much work for us to do specifically in the painting industry. Even if there was someone else, like this is crazy. I told my team, I want it to be a goal of ours that in the next 5 years, we have 10 people copying what we're doing. Literally copying, doing automation for painters. Like if we have 10 people copying us, then they're legit businesses and they're all $1 million operations. How big do you think we're going to be? Because everybody's doing what we're doing. As soon as you have someone copying you, get good news, you're a leader. You are by definition a leader that is leading people down the path. And so I feel like sometimes people might be like, if I do your show, then no one's going to watch when I do it on mine. Or like, you know what I'm saying? Like it just, there's those ideas of like, there's only so much attention. So like or I only have so much time, so I need to allocate it towards this. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, any chance to, if you have this is like the extreme, and this is where I again would say quantity, but if you have a thought, why not document it and post it either on a YouTube channel or a podcast or something? And if you can segment it into really small subjects, like you already had the thought, how much more effort is it to record and publish the thing? Because
Actually, quite a lot.
well, if for you, it's a because you have this quality standard of everything, right? But what if like I could post a YouTube live right now, right? On my YouTube app. I did it on the way back from the gym today, not on my YouTube, not my Boolean channel, but I have another channel for just throwing up random thoughts that I have. And I literally record it on my phone. I used to save it on my video, like my photos on my phone, and then upload the video. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going live. As I think about it, I'm going to post it. And now it's on the internet forever. And so I don't know, nobody, those videos, that channel has no one watching it. And I don't care because it's a super specific title. It's 3 minutes long. And if someone happens to be looking, like, I don't know, I have no idea who's going to find it or see it. But in fact, I'll tell you, this is a true story that I'm blown away by. On this this channel, so this was 6-7 years ago, from watching Gary Vaynerchuk, he said that he had this idea, or he was thinking, imagine if you could see daily vlogs of Jeff Bezos when he started Amazon. Like every day, Jeff was just like, hey, check out this desk that I made out of a door to save money. You know, like all these things that just how he thought. And you could see like Jeff Bezos on day one of Amazon. Like that would be so cool. Like to see someone that's at a level that seems unattainable. If there was a way to go back in time and be like, was he like? What did he sound like? What did he talk about? Like there's a few video of Steve Jobs doing stuff like that. And I just think it's fascinating to see like a 25-year-old or 28-year-old Steve Jobs talk about these visions and things that he had. And to actually put yourself in that situation to be like, how absurd it is for this guy at that point in his life to be saying the things that he's saying. Like now, if Steve Jobs is still alive, he could say something. It's like Elon Musk can say something now. And it's crazy, but it's also not that crazy because he's Elon, right? But he wasn't always Elon. So the point that I'm making is that 7 years ago, I was inspired by what Gary Vaynerchuk said. And I was like, I'm going to just start recording thoughts. And I started with my phone and I intentionally lowered the bar of quality because I knew that I needed to do this thing daily to get better at speaking, to just talk, get comfortable in front of a camera. Like there's so many things that are intangible. And that's another reason why I would say if you focus on quality, there's so many skills that you don't even know you don't have, like being comfortable talking to a camera. And the best way to get comfortable talking to a camera is just to do a lot of reps. Yeah. And then you don't need a good quality camera or output to get more and more comfortable talking to a camera. You just need to do it. And so I recorded videos for probably 9 months, 6 to 9 months, mostly every day. One of the videos that I recorded was called The 10 People I'm going to Meet in the Next 10 Years. And I made a video and I outlined, these are the people like, and I honestly, I can't even remember from the top of my head the whole list, but I made this. The video has, in fact, I just need to look this up because it's too fun. And this is a hack to why I think anyone right now could start a YouTube channel and just start putting their thoughts, document, just clip it, put it on YouTube. So check this out. This is and this is the channel that, again, I never talk about. This is actually probably the first time I've ever mentioned this to anybody on, like, wow. People might have found it, but so this is the oldest video back 7 years ago, you know, just recording. This is when
you're sharing the wrong screen. Chris.
You are 100% right. Thank you for telling me. I'm the tech guy. Trust me with your tech. Here we go.
Here we go.
So 7 years ago, first video that I made. And this is back when this is an example of similar to what I'm doing now, but also a mistake. We went after oral surgery. And so I had Sky Media was like an oral surgery marketing and branding company because I had heard like you should be a niche. And so this is where I would say this is an example of how not to do it because I didn't have relationships. I didn't have clients. I just thought, hey, if I start posting videos about marketing and branding for oral surgery, they'll just flock to me. Foolish idea. I did that for about a year, and that was like ultimately what drove me to shut down Sky and take a job as a marketing director, because I just arbitrarily picked a niche. But one of the videos that I recorded back then was like I would record myself making cold calls. Just literally like for an hour, I'm just gonna record a bunch of cold calls. And so one of the things that I somewhere in here, I have the 10 people. Here we go. 10 people I'm going to meet in the next 10 years. So if you look at this, it has 25 views, 25. Nobody watched this. And I probably watched it 5 times in the last 6 years, right? To remember who I said. On this list, I have the people that I said I wanted to meet, right? And I don't know if you have the ability to connect me to any of these people, but these are the people that I want to meet. And the idea was, I have no idea how this would happen. It sounded absurd. It still sounds crazy. Like, how am I going to meet Gary Vaynerchuk? I don't know, but I'm gonna. Like, at some point on my journey, I'm going to sit down either on a podcast.
You remind me of how Gary actually wants to buy the jets.
Yes,
it's like his
exactly.
obsession with buying the jets.
So this guy, Cameron Herold, have you ever heard of him?
No, actually.
So was the CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and he's written some really good books, but he's a very niche like author in operations for businesses. He was a keynote speaker about a year ago at an event, a virtual event that I was able to attend because of being a part of SaaS Academy. And I messaged him on Instagram and was like, hey, Cameron, any chance you're interested in doing a podcast? Because I have the Pursuit of Purpose podcast.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. And he said, yeah, I'm open to it. You know, I get asked all the time, so I don't want to be rude, but just to let you know, I decline about 80% of the requests that I get. And I was like, okay, like totally get it. And so what I did was I was like, wait a minute, Cameron Herold, I've known him for a super long time. So I went back to this YouTube channel and I looked up the video of the 10 people. I was like, I could have sworn he was on here. And sure enough, he's number 4 on my list. So I took a screenshot of this video. I highlighted the date and then pointed that he was number 4. And then I included a link to the timestamp of the video where I'm talking about meeting Cameron Herold. And I sent him the message that said, hey, totally understand you're a busy person. I'm willing to bet I have something that you don't get confronted with all the time. And here's my story. And I didn't know how. I just knew that I wanted to meet you 7 years ago. And I kid you not, in 10 minutes, he replied to my email and said, this is effing awesome. And he CC'd his assistant and said, schedule this for August. And so 3 months ago, I had a podcast with Cameron Herold, which was miles above anybody that I should have had the ability to interview on my podcast at the time. And why? It was literally because I documented at a time. And like, if you watch these videos of Chris, it's like, it's just silly. And on one hand, I'm embarrassed, but at the same time, I'm like, this is freaking awesome. And I hope more people see that the key is just starting. Like, I'm going to have the best quality production YouTube videos in 5 years. And I'm still the same person that made the same crappy videos on my phone back in 2017 and was making claims and it's not even a claim. It's like a wish. But I made it a little bit more real by, like, if I would have just told my wife or journaled about this, I'm not having a podcast with Cameron Herold. So like, that's the other thing, is that the power of YouTube to just be like a public archive of thoughts is so, so cool. And then after this happened, and keep in mind, I had forgotten that I had recorded this. It was like this very subtle thing in the back of my head. I was like,
2017.
I should go look this up. Yeah, I'd forgotten about it. And again, it's laughable to me that the video has 25 views and it doesn't matter. And now I'm like, I'm going to go message all these other people. I actually asked Cameron if he could help me connect with anyone else on the list. And he said he could help with Ryan and Seth Godin. And so I've sent messages to them now. But I'm like, at some point in 20 years, they're going to be like, okay, like this guy said he was going to meet me 20 years ago. I'm on my deathbed. I guess I'll I'll do one more podcast for you, Chris. You know what I mean? Like that's what's going to happen. And it's all from just being bold enough and not caring and just posting, you know? So anyways, that's, again, I'm pretty passionate about the idea of quantity because I think you have to, more often than not, we block ourselves from the dreams and goals we have because we think that there is some arbitrary standard that has to be met. And I just think that's totally false. I do think you should care about quality and you should get better over time. 100%. You got to be like passionate about being the best. But some days when you don't feel like doing it, posting a shitty video is better than not posting.
I agree. I agree. I will still die on the hill of quantity and quality.
Yeah.
Because it's an Alex character thing.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's, I mean, I completely agree with you. That's why you're successful.
Not only, well, here's the thing. We did it backwards. We build a business first because being a generalist and being in the kind of line of work that we are, like you are, you know it, I know it, we become very, very sticky with our clients. It's really hard to change.
By the way, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why, but did you just see that thumbs down?
Yeah.
For some reason, this sign, the LED sign that I have behind me, randomly, the camera will like pick up that it's like it sees a thumb that's pointing down somehow, and it will just thumbs down things. So I want to let you know that I was not telling you, boo, I don't want to hear anymore. It was just the computer's mind doing its own thing.
I know, but I was watching you, and you didn't do any kind of gesture, so I knew that it was completely random. But dude, like, it's so hard to get on your feet in this kind of business. So in order to have like money and run the business, and that's again due to my pursuit of quality. Okay, quantity, yes, but quality, not just for the first 6 months MVP, but for the next 6 years quality of us supporting somebody. It was a really difficult thing to kind of build a team. And only in the last year and a half, kind of the same time when you seriously started, by chance, we also decided to like go for it. It's quality is a key driver for me because of, like, I know that it doesn't matter how many clients I have, if the client, the project that I'm working on is only good for six weeks for the MVP, and then nobody and the project isn't a success, it's not being used, all of that kind of thing, it doesn't sit well with me. So I think that's part of the reason why I'm adamant on quantity and quality from day one. Sometimes in order to get sometimes I find myself debating with my own self, like, oh, I want quality. That means I need a better camera. Great. Buy that damn camera. And that sometimes is a key driver for me. Like, dude, you bought the camera. Why the hell aren't you not using it? Like, it's like an extra thing to drive you or me to produce videos. It's difficult. It's not easy. The most daunting thing for me with YouTube wasn't so much talking to the camera. I don't feel like that's a big deal, because by that time I was so used to talking to people, strangers, new clients over Zoom. I care, like, I'm using a camera all day long talking to people. So I was used to that. But one thing that was a little bit annoying for me was editing. Like, because I tried editing before for a bunch of years, I knew that a video like of good quality, a minute of it, or rather a minute of produced video is like an hour of edit. or maybe if you're a pro and that's all you do in your life, it's probably much quicker. But generally speaking, it took time. So until I discovered that you can hire editors, duh, it was like such a daunting thing for me. So I want to kind of now pivot a little bit towards the pursuit of purpose, the podcast. And for like we haven't touched on that particular chapter of what Chris is. Again, you've got 160 something podcasts on that thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you created it? And I think there is a good narrative that we've kind of built over the last hour of Chris entrepreneurship, seeking that, but purpose. Maybe that I think the word purpose, I don't think we've mentioned it in our conversation. Yet it's the title of your podcast. So initiate us into why the podcast, and like what's the purpose of the
Yeah. So yeah, purpose, I would say that is something that has been just literally the word or the idea of like, what's your purpose? That's been something that I would say back to the story of my dad. I think the one thing I didn't say before is that my dad was a PE teacher, an elementary school physical education teacher. And so he taught K through 6 PE class. And he did that. He was in that job at the same school for 34 years.
Wow.
As a kindergarten through 6th grade PE teacher. He retired, and literally a month after he retired as a teacher, so he would have been 60 something, 50, 58, 57 or something like that. So he's at the same school for 30 some years, retires, a month later gets diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and then 3 months later he dies. So, like, obviously, on one hand, it's like that's so disappointing and devastating and just a sad, dark story. But at his funeral, we found the biggest Catholic church that we could in Hillsborough. And Hillsborough is the town we lived in. And there was over 700 people that came to his funeral. There were people standing outside because they couldn't fit. And there was high school kids, and my dad was at the same school for so long that he had
generations,
grandkids of kids that he taught in the beginning that were then coming back into his class. And so, and there's so many stories I could tell about this, but the point is that when I was in high school, I remember being embarrassed that my dad was just a PE teacher. And that can sound mean, I guess, or maybe I was conceited. I don't know. But all my other friends' dads, they were sales reps and vice presidents of these companies. And they all had they were going to conferences and traveling and all this impressiveness, right? And because of that, they had nicer cars and better things and more money, and their house was bigger. And my dad was just a PE teacher that teachers don't make any money. And that's what he did. And then he would there were a lot of benefits. Like I got to go to the gym and practice and play and swing on the rope. And anytime they were going to do obstacle course day, like as a 5-year-old, I would go to school with my dad and get to do the obstacle course all day long, like all these things that it's crazy. But purpose was like at that, when you witness your dad's funeral as a 21-year-old and you see that someone that lives a life of purpose that just pours into kids, and you can see the impact that has on generations of people and hundreds of people that are funerals are an interesting thing to me, because how often have you heard someone that you knew died and you're like, oh yeah, I like that guy, right? But I'm speaking for myself. I hear about people dying all the time, and there's not even a split second that I'm going to go it's a lot of work to come to a funeral. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. It's just the reality. Like people are dying all the time, and we can't just go to funeral after funeral after funeral after funeral. But there are a few people that you are going to travel across the world to go pay your respects to. And to me, it's like the fact that 700 people traveled, took time off work, brought their kids from school, whatever it was. It was 11 a.m. on a Thursday, right? like people from all over came to this. And to me, I'm like, that was purpose. He had a purpose and he knew that. And that's what he did. And so from like literally the first company, Sky Studios, that I started, my slogan was video with a purpose. That was like my thing. And then I was like, for many years, I was like, I kind of want to do a podcast. This was back when I felt like everybody had already had a podcast. And I was like, and back to this idea of like, oh, I missed the boat. Maybe I shouldn't, I should have done this 10 years ago and I didn't, so I'm never going to do it. And I remember thinking that when I started the podcast, because it was the most awkward and embarrassing thing to go to a business friend of mine that I admired and was like, hey, do you want to be in my podcast? And he was like, you have a podcast? And I was like, no,
but
but
I'm
I
going to
will.
start with you.
And you're going to be the first episode. And he was like, okay. And so that's the hardest thing, but I did it. And that was back in I think it was like 2018 was my first ever episode. And again, crappy mic. I think I used my like Apple headphones and like I had nothing. You listen to the audio, but this is the other thing. I love the internet because you can go back and find the first episode and see. And I did that one, and then I did another one, and then another one. And then I actually took like 2 or 3 years off because I took a job and we had kids and I was busy. And then just like you said, I realized I love the conversations and I hated editing. And I also hated the booking process, just like hey, what works for you? Oh, I don't know. Like, how about this? And you're just like going back and forth trying to lock stuff down. So about 2 years ago, I was in a coaching group and I was like, you know what? I love podcasting. I always have. And I hadn't done a podcast in like 2 years. And I was like, I'm going to automate back to automation and efficiency and Airtable and all that stuff. I'm going to create a super easy, like a Calendly link. That's just like, here's a link to my calendar. I even save it. I saved it in my phone as a short code. So PodCal, if I type in PodCal on my phone, it just fills in the booking link. And so I literally now, when I see someone, I'm like, dude, you're like super knowledgeable in whatever. You want to do a podcast? And they're like, I don't know, I've never done one. I'm like, well, here's my link, book a time. And I sent it to you too. We'll be doing it yours. Yeah. And I literally just like, I go on my day. So I have to be like, hey, do you want to do it? Here, send the link. It gives information of what to fill in. That populates an Airtable base for me with like my schedule so my editor can see it. I show up to the podcast with like my notes about the person. And then I use AI to generate some questions for me. And then I come to the podcast. We talk about the specific thing. I use Riverside. So it's all recorded on the cloud. I stop recording and then I go back to work. And then my editor logs into Riverside, downloads the content. We have the whole thing mapped out. So it's like, just like you said, to me, like purpose is something that I love. I honestly, I'll talk to anybody as long as they are really passionate about the subject that we're talking about. Because to me, if you talk to someone that knows their purpose and is just like, gets excited, like, have you ever, I'm trying to think of the most absurd thing. I remember watching a video from Mike Rowe on Dirty Jobs about garbage collectors. And when you talk to someone that loves garbage collecting, it's actually interesting. Like it's like, dude, that's crazy. I had no idea. Like, when you're talking to someone that's passionate about something, you can get excited by their excitement. And I feel like that's contagious. What I want to. Yeah, I want to talk to people that are, one of my favorite questions to ask people when vetting them for a podcast, before I ask them to be on a podcast, is if you were the best in the world, like let's say if you were in the running to have a shot at being the best in the world in something, what would that niche topic be? And that's where I would say, like, I'm the best in the world at automating painting businesses.
I remember you asking me that question.
Yeah. And so you can then answer that question. And if depending on someone's answer, I'm like, oh, interesting. And then we go on. But people that you meet that have like, oh, and they answer it right away, I'm like, that's what we're going to talk about on the podcast. Because you have a level of, and I asked one person this and they were like, oh, I'm too humble to even state that. And I'm like, that's garbage.
Bullshit.
You need to believe in your gifts. Yeah. I would actually say there's a C.S. Lewis quote that is humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And that was a big unlock for me, is that you can still be a humble person and say, I am the best in the world at automating painting companies. And it takes true humility to own and say that, because that was a gift that you've been given or that you've earned, and you should own that. But then humility is just, I'm not going to just think about and just dwell on how amazing I am all day, every day. And if anything, you're more likely to say, oh, you're a HVAC consultant? Don't talk to me. Like, I mean, I can help you, but like, I'm the best at this. I've got lots of opinions on everything else, but I'm just a regular person in all these other domains of life. This is my expertise, and I can own that, and I can be humble in that. And I feel like, anyways, to me, the podcast has just been a way to find people that I get, like every single podcast I've ever done, like 160, 70, something like that. Every single one, I leave the podcast more excited about whatever I was doing that day. Like, I put it on Fridays because it's like my dessert for the week. And I do all my podcasts on Fridays because I'm like, Friday, it's end of the week. It's like, kind of burned out some weeks. And I do a podcast and I'm like, heck yeah, let's hit this weekend. Like, I'm just pumped and optimistic and excited because I'm talking to people that are passionate about whatever their purpose is.
We're about to close. I know you have to run, and I have to run as well. And I do have a few other questions, but I feel like we're going to cover them on your podcast, which is like in about a month or something like that. Do you have any questions for me? Because it's like a typical thing that I do.
Yeah. I would say, what would you say your advice to younger Alex would be? Like 10 year ago Alex, what would you tell him?
If you're worried, you're not busy enough. If you're feeling worried, you're not busy enough. That's what I would have given Alex at 24.
I have another follow-up to that. What are you most afraid of?
An empty schedule.
Empty schedule. Interesting. So I'm going to go a little more like diving in, because that's like maybe more random. But if you were to pick like a specific action, event, scenario, like a situation that you could find yourself in or something that you could produce, what's the thing that's most scary to think about, like having to be confronted with? Does that make sense?
I feel like an empty schedule is a source of fear in itself. Because if I have an empty schedule and I'm not delivering some kind of value to somebody else, that will have long-term devastating effects. So it doesn't, like, I'm not really afraid of the things that I can't change. So things like death, be that mine or somebody else's, I can't change it. Maybe I can eat healthier or exercise, and yeah, fine. But generally speaking, I think that there's no particular thing other than when I stop being useful, when I stop being obsessed with helping somebody else. Like, one of the key lines in the manifesto of our company is, I really wanted to help young people. More specifically, and this might sound a little bit like selfish in a sense, I really wanted to help the young people of Greece, Cyprus, because that's where I grew up, right? That's what I knew. Because I was looking at one of the best math curriculums in the world, like kids go through them. It's incredible. Like the Greek youth is incredible at math, incredible. At a very young age, like it's super advanced compared to a lot of other countries. And you've got all of this talent, all of this potential being completely wasted, and you end up with people who, they're thankful for every job that they can get their hands on, uh, yet they have so much potential. So that was one of the key things that I kind of swore that, you know what, dude, I don't care if I spend every penny that I have in the business bank account, but I help some. It's not like a messiah complex. No.
Yeah.
It's like I wish I was given.
Yeah, it's your purpose and vision. Like you feel like if that's your motivation at the end of the day, is giving back, pouring into the younger version of you, that with the person that never didn't do that for you.
Exactly, because there was there are more opportunities now, but there are still so much. There's still so much missing. Yeah. Not, and the other thing is that not everybody is going to be ambitious enough to start a YouTube channel, put themselves out there,
and that's okay. Yeah,
edit
100%.
their own videos in order to get a shot at getting a client for their consulting business. Because honestly, for anybody who's watching this, I think my first lead that came from a quality YouTube channel, where where I was paying attention to the camera that I was using, to the mic, to the editing, to all of that thing. I think the first lead came after 80 videos, 80. Right now we're at 160 something. We might get a lead a week or 2 leads a week, something like that. Again, paying close attention to quality and quantity. Generalizing as well, so it takes a lot of effort. It takes, again, a slightly polarizing figure, but one of the big mentors in my life was Grant Cardone. Polarizing as he may be, he wrote some very, very good books about, especially one
10X.
that really 10x, because that opened my mind to the amount of effort and why things fail. It really dawned on me that the only reason why people fail, enterprises fail, is because they underestimated how much effort was required in the first place. So, hopefully I've answered your question about.
Well, I'm going to go. I had a follow up to it, so I like to know that I see where you're going. Here's an interesting. This is just a great unlock for me to ponder. So you said an empty schedule is the thing that scares you the most. Here's a crazy thought. Have you ever heard the idea of like the thing that what? I'll actually ask you. What's the thing that pisses you off? And you could also just say, this is something that makes me mad. Like just pick up, there's probably, like for me, I could think of a dozen things on the top of my head. It's like all these things bother me. These are all, it might not be the one thing, but just give me something that's like, yeah, this kind of is annoying.
I think the thing that bothers me the most is bad communication. Like not enough communication.
Perfect.
With
so
people.
those two things, the thing that pisses you off or the thing you're most afraid of, the idea is that you could have answered a million different things to that question. There's literally millions of options to things that piss you off, right? Same thing for like, what are you afraid of? I could tell you bears. I could tell you all these things like a fire, like, I don't know, I could have so many things. But for me, I mean, someone asked me, what's the thing that scares you the most? This is kind of hilarious. But the most like scary scenario, because I could go more philosophical, but like legitimately, the thing that makes me squirm and get the most uncomfortable is karaoke, like at a bar. Like if we're at a bar and there's karaoke, I'm like, oh gosh, don't say, Chris, you should go do a song. Like I'm just terrified.
I'm a
of
musician.
karaoke.
Performing is part
There
of
you go.
the parcel.
But you're not afraid of that, right? And so also the other thing is stand-up comedy. So those two things are, when someone says, what are you afraid of? I'm like, those two things are at the top of my consciousness of like, that's scary. And at the same time, the thing that pisses you off is also a reflection. Both the fear and the anger it's a reflection of what you are seeing in yourself. And I would say that the wisdom that I was given is that the thing that scares you the most is probably the thing you need to do next. And the thing that pisses you off is probably the thing that you need to reflect on, because it's probably the reason that it pisses you off is because you have struggled with that thing itself. And that is, if you didn't struggle with it, you wouldn't notice it and it wouldn't piss you off. Because like there's a ton of things that my wife does that could piss off a lot of people, but there's a few things that she does that piss me off, because I'm like, like for example, I don't like when she contradicts an instruction that I give the kids. So if I tell the kids to do something, it frustrates me. So then it's like, well, why does that frustrate you? And I feel like I'm being undermined, or I'm not being respected as like the head of the house, or like my father figure is like being undercut by my wife. But it's like, well, why does that bother you? I'm like, because like I want to be a respected man. It's like, well, do you not feel respected? And I'm like, maybe. Like, and so you go deeper into this hole of like, this thing is a frustration for you oftentimes because there is some underlying thing. And it might not be like, oh, you are mad at bad communication because you suck at communication. That's not it. Maybe it could be, well, why is communication important?
Like
but why is communication important? What would you, like you said, that's a frustration. So when people don't communicate with you, why is that maddening or frustrating?
No, it's not so much with me. Like, I have this concept of, I call it, talk to me, baby. Like, I will throw this out in my communication with my team. Like, when people under communicate things or they assume things, that's one of the things that I find annoying. And unfortunately, I can only change myself. In other words, I can only change my behavior towards this in some way. Be more accepting, be more teaching. Like, dude, when you don't communicate with me about certain things, I prefer that you over communicate with me. Like, whatever you think normal communication is, just go over. And like, I'm never going to say no to people messaging me at, ungodly hours of the night because they want to let me know about certain things. And I will do the same. I will over communicate and over express all the underlying background that might be related to a project or a problem. Like, I want to empty my brain so that I don't have to explain it again. And so, unfortunately, I can't change other people.
Yeah, I would say it's like you should journal about this. But this is like, if you go down this route, there is something of value. If you explore, you're afraid of an empty calendar, I would say at some point in the next month, you need to like intentionally create an empty calendar and just sit with that. Because I believe that there is something that's going to, like, your life will be noticeably better or improved, or an idea will come to you that you are preventing from coming to you because you are like, for some reason, you have tied, I need to be busy with something and the lack of busyness with a negative thing, right? And that concept is like I can see you're resisting everything I'm saying right now, but I would say that idea of just like there is something there that you are going, that is like good for you. If you can confront the thing that you're afraid of, just confront it. You don't have to do it forever, but just like sit with it and face that head on. Like for me, I'm committing to doing a stand-up comedy routine and doing karaoke at some point in the next year, because I'm like, that scares the crap out of me. But I bet you that there is like, for some reason, I'm afraid of it. So I just need to confront it. And then maybe I'm like, oh, it's not a big deal. But I bet that either I will learn something in the process of confronting that fear that's going to impact the way I do YouTube videos or my confidence or whatever it is. And in the same way, the things that frustrate me about other people generally are really good things to reflect on. Go deeper into why is that a frustration? What would happen if I did that? Do I do that? Why is it that I do that? Like there's just those two concepts of what's the thing that you're afraid of, what's the thing that pisses you off, and maybe the like communication thing. It's possible that actually doesn't piss you off as much as you're thinking, and you just were saying communication. But if you go to like, what's the thing? Like, think about it, and you could text me, or we'll talk about it on your podcast. What's the thing? Yeah, when you're on mine, what's the thing that's like, I am so frustrated by blank, and then you go deeper into, oh my gosh, I actually don't feel that I'm loved unless I communicate. So I feel that I am like not worthy. I'm just projecting a ton of stuff because I've had similar thoughts. But if you go down into layers of why does that bother me? What do I think of people that don't have that quality? Do I not have that quality? Do people think that about me? Like you just go into that and you can uncover some big unconscious drivers that are probably holding you back from something greater because you have this weird lens that you're filtering everything through. So anyways, that I've done that. Those concepts in the last 2 years have been transformational for me. And it's really just like self-reflection that I'm so passionate about, of just like, once you actually identify an example of how the thing that frustrates you is the biggest thing that is like the biggest clue to something that needs addressing in your own life, it's like, whoa, blow your mind.
Chris, this has been amazing. My expectations going into this podcast were like, okay, we're just gonna have a chat. Well, no, it wasn't zero.
No,
because there's
have a zero expectation every time.
Because there was like a lot of things that we have in common, like YouTube and automation, all of that. But this has been really unbelievable. So I can't wait to get on yours, and we can do the flip version of today. So yeah, dude, that's it. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I've taken a lot of your time. It's almost 2 hours. And yeah, can't wait to talk to you again very, very soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Alex. It's been fun.
Thanks, Chris. Take it easy.